Little bit of work here for the show. And if you're just joining, welcome. The show is Radicalized. We will be starting at 6 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern here in Canada. Just Scott, welcome to the show here. Can I get your age and can I get a rough location for you?
Oh, I'm too bloody old. I'm 50 years old in Nova Scotia, raised and born in Ontario.
Attaboy. Alrighty, welcome to the show here. If you're just tuning in, everybody, what I'm hoping is to get, again, a little bit more international perspective on the show tonight. We are going to be talking predominantly about Canadian politics. Just Scott, hope you're up for that. But what I'm
Well, I
hoping
can
is,
actually here. Hold on, give me a
yep,
second. I can actually give you an international because I spent the last 30 years in the states.
nice,
So,
nice,
like, I'm
okay.
very close to them, and I spent time in Europe with businesses. So I actually have kind of a small outside of Canada. I think I have a better understanding than a majority. I'm not
Excellent.
completely equalized, but I have an understanding.
That's excellent. I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective here. What I'm going to do is at 6 o'clock here in about 5, 6 minutes, I'm going to just basically give an intro into the show and kind of relate on how I want the show to sort of evolve. But really, what I'm looking at is how is what we are seeing in Canada, how have we seen it relate to other parts of the world? The way that we've already seen these ploys in action and the effects that they've sort of had through it. Unfortunately, it seems like in every Western country right now, there is a threat of anger. There is a real sense of panic. And where that comes from, I kind of want to touch on in my diatribe right at the beginning here. But Scott, when you just as a quick rundown here, as someone who is from Canada and spent time in the state, what's the major difference in, the mentality that you see between the two countries?
They look at us as uh, the adopted stepchild who's part of the family, but you're not blood. Like they'll look after you and take care of you as long as you know you're for the family, but you're the adopted stepchild. And let's be honest, our leaders for decades have taken advantage of that by relying a majority of our trade onto them. And so the position we have right now, like, listen, I've been on multiple lives where everyone wants to blame Justin Trudeau for this. This isn't a Justin Trudeau problem. This started back
Hmm.
in Mulrooney's time. Like Mulrooney started this, who was a conservative, and like, listen, I vote conservative. Like, so just let you know, I blame him. And then every leader since then has relied so strongly on the U.S. economy. This is the position we're in now. Like, it's 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 sad, but everyone's saying, "Oh, we're not for sale." Guess what, guys? We got sold out a long time ago, and now we're suffering. And like, listen, I hope to God we figure this out, but I honestly don't know how we do it. Like, legitimately, I don't. I really don't. Like, the new leader wants to sell us to the EU. The previous leaders were selling us to the states. Like, I don't know what to say. Like I want to stay Canada, but I don't see this happening. Like, where do we go?
Right, right. And I don't disagree with you on that part. When I, as a younger fellow without kind of the knowledge base that I have now, when I first looked at the free trade agreements when they were originally proposed, I thought it was a great idea. A little further in, you start to realize that if you want an equal playing field, you can't have an equal playing field with a labor force that makes $1 a day. And when you can ship something across an entire half of the planet and still put it in the stores cheaper than you can making it locally, it was going to throw economics across the world out of whack in one way, shape, or form. And I agree with you. What we're seeing is the results of some of that, a couple of decades down the road.
Can
But
I ask you a
like
question?
you bet.
I'm now seeing a surge of Canadians wanting to go and join the EU, which actually bothers me more than joining the States. Like both
Hmm.
sides, I'm against, but I'm really offended by people wanting to join EU. Can anybody tell me how Canada joined the EU is good? Because I've yet to see any country besides Germany and France benefiting from that because they dictate all our laws. So it's basically like Quebec running Canada, and we have to go by all the rules. And like, if you're Canadian, you understand what I'm saying. You have a minority of the population controlling the majority of the population. Why is that a good thing?
Hmm. Well, so I guess the counter question is, if you don't want to deal with the EU and we don't want to deal with somebody who's threatening our national sovereignty, who do you trade with?
Well, here's the problem is that I've been voting against all these populist systems and, like they don't get anywhere because people vote in 6 month sections. They live their life, an election shows up, they pay attention for 6 months, vote for like feelings, and then this is where we are. So like this has to be a hard wake up to Canada. Like if we want to be sovereign and survive, there's going to be probably I guess say 10 years of suffering, like bad suffering, to follow this out where we stay Canada. Or we can take the easy way out, like Canadians tend to do, and join the States or EU. Because, like, legitimately, for us to solve where we are financially, because most of these people that are like, oh, join EU, join the 51, oh, we can fight, they don't understand the economics of where we are right now. We are in a bad position. So, like, if you're willing to put your nose down and suffer for the next 10 years, and it's going to be rough, we can get through this. But a majority of the people I talk to, they want the easy way out. And that's what hurts me.
Okay.
Because that's not Canada.
Alrighty. Alrighty. Just got, I'm going to ask you to put your mic on mute, please, here at 6 o'clock. So I'm just going to do my preamble here into the show. Let me just take care of a little bit of the technical stuff here. Alrighty. Alrighty. If you are just joining, welcome aboard. The show is Radicalized. I am your host, Mr. Radical, here on the Beaver Politics Network. Here at the Beaver Politics Network, we work for the peoples because we are the peoples. Now, the format of the program is if you are not speaking, please have your mic shut off. Allow everybody to speak. We operate on knowledge through discourse. The only way that discourse happens is if everybody gets a chance to speak. So when you are up and asking to speak, please make your point and state it, and then allow somebody else to chime in. If you become rude or disrespectful or simply can't be pulled off of a topic, we will ask you to leave. That being said, if you happen to miss a show of Radicalized or anything else here on the Beaver Politics Network, you can catch rerun episodes on YouTube. You can go check that out at any time. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to add two people to the box here. The lovely Miss Radical and another fellow. Hope you guys come in. But like I said, uh, if you are just coming in, please mute your mic. On their invite, didn't want to come in. Hey, Miss Radical.
Hey, Mr. Radical, how are you?
Good, 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 good.
Good.
Alrighty, let's get going. Remember, people, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Uh, So let's get this going. So,
What's the topic?
I am just going to
Let's
introduce
hear.
that right now. So, uh, what is happening in the world today? Obviously, we have seen a slew of attacks on Western democracies and anybody that really isn't under right-wing authoritarianism. We currently in Alberta right now have somebody that is pretty much stating openly that she is looking to separate from our country and join America as a 51st state. She seems more concerned about whether or not America is going to do well than any other scenario that's presented to her. And this is in a province that has the highest utilities, the highest insurance, the highest inflation. Their economy is not doing well because their unemployment is starting to climb and continues to climb. On top of that, Dirty Danielle, the premier of that province, is now under investigation for what I believe at this point are pretty obvious tampering and benefiting her and her government through private means, while she tears down healthcare, while she tears down education, and then adds the bonus on top of the cake is that she wants to spend 60 or 70 million dollars of Albertan taxpayers' money to clean up wells that the corporations are already obligated to clean up while simultaneously cutting AISH benefits. And if you're not from Alberta, AISH benefits are disability benefits. So she is taking from the very poorest in her province in an aid to the very richest in her province. She complains about spending money, and yet she has hampered anything that has come into her province that is not attached to oil and gas. What does this look like on an international stage? We have the premier of our province going down to speak with a Christian nationalist organization, because that is essentially what PragerU is, a Christian nationalist organization. She has no problem going down there to spend time to do that. But what concerns me the most about all of these things is this is a gameplay that we have seen in other countries all over the last roughly decade to a decade and a half. And the thing that concerns me so much about it is, now, I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. Things are not great right now. Canadians, Americans, the average citizen, no matter where you live, is struggling to get by, and we're struggling hard. However, on the other side of things, we also have to understand that we statistically live in the safest times in human history. We have the most access to education, to healthcare, as long as we don't let the conservatives in charge on that one, to entertainment, to education. We have all of these things available to us. And yet, most of us are running around like the end times are essentially here. The thing that I want to point out is these feelings at these times are manufactured, and they are the groundwork and the foundation for allowing populations that, even in a country as forward thinking as Canada, that some of us honestly believe that completely tearing down our government is the answer to the few woes that we really have. But most of our woes continue to circle back to one thing and one thing only: the widening gap between the rich and the poor. The rich are well aware of what they are doing. Most of our problems right now have been absolutely manufactured. They've been absolutely manufactured. And yet, still, some cannot see that what is happening here is what is happening. We are losing a significant portion of our youth, particularly males, to these intrinsic ideas of nationalism. And the only way that they can do that is if these men, these young, are so desperate for that affiliation that they simply don't see another way out. Those idle hands that we have and this stagnation that has been manufactured for our youth has been meant to bring us to this point where young people are ready to pick up nationalist flags and start spewing lines that we have not heard in essentially an entire century on this planet, and yet we are watching it unfold right in front of our very eyes. The rich are using ultranationalism, and they are using. We pretend to masquerade a lot of these leaders as national leaders. What they are is the wealthy at the end of the day. And this war that we are currently in is against the wealthy. I want to add one thing. If you're just joining in, welcome to the show. What I'm hoping for is that somebody that is not from North America will hopefully invite themselves into the box here. I'd love to get a little bit more international perspective and flavor. So please invite yourself in. Just allow me to bring some people up.
So, Mr. Radical, we were talking about the Premier of Alberta. And it's just not such a surprise that she would behave this way. I mean, she put children's health care at risk. She gave them cheap pain medication to save a buck. She works for corporate. She works for the oil and gas industry. She's all American all the time. She doesn't serve to support Canadians. She supports Trump. And honestly, I just got to ask, when does it get treasonous? If you're a patriotic individual, when does treason finally come to be a topic of conversation? Because that's exactly where we are at this moment in time.
I couldn't agree more. A beautiful, sorry I had to shut your mic off. Please, the intrinsic rules of the show, please, are if you're not speaking, please have your mic off so everybody gets a chance to be heard in full. Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Miss Radical. So, a beautiful welcome to the show. Can I get your age and a rough location for you?
You're not supposed to ask a lady her age, but I will say that I am 51 and I'm from Nova Scotia.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You had a chance to listen in. What's your perspective from Nova Scotia on this?
And I know a lot of people would say, well, we have no right to say anything. It's got nothing to affect us. We cause a lot of problems. Well, I'm sorry that people feel that way. I have to say that I completely agree with what Radical had to say, and I do agree exactly with what you said. I was a resident of Alberta for a year, and I don't know, maybe it's just that you can't take Nova Scotia out of the girl. It just wasn't the place for me. And it was a completely different world. I don't know if it's because of my age when I showed up, because I was a little bit older, but I have to say, like, the people are just completely different. And it was very much, they were so surprised that I was here. And I said, why? Well, you're so nice. And I went, well, that's what we do. We're Canadians, right? Like that's how we are. No, there's so many people who don't. And I saw someone read about the equalization payments. When I see stuff like that, I don't quite think you understand what an equalization payment is. And I understand that, everybody is very reliant on a lot of oil. I can't say that my family hasn't been. I have family members that were born and raised in Alberta. They have worked the fields. They laid pipe and Kitimat, for God's sakes, and they just finished a contract last year. So, I realize that is an industry that, my family has benefited from, and the country benefited from, and the world benefited from. But we also have to look at other resources too, and to see on how many moratoriums that she has put on in that province to stop green energy. Like, I couldn't get over that. I couldn't get over that I could be driving through fields of canola that were absolutely gorgeous in color and the height of their peak, growth. And then right next to it, there's an oil derrick. And I thought, what? I kind of had to scratch my head. It was very foreign to me to see that, because we don't have that in Nova Scotia. And it's not that we don't, we haven't done our own drilling. We have done, offshore oil here and gas for a number of years. It's a big industry. Anybody has ever heard of the Roman guerrilla disaster? Look, we've had issues here, so I get it. This isn't something that no one wants to get rid of. And yes, there's lots of pluses to electric vehicles, but there's also lots of downfalls to electric vehicles too. So it's a six of one, half a dozen the other. What do? We have to try to find equal balance. I get that, but I think people really have to stop realizing that we are very much, so many have taken on a very Americanized style, and that is not us. That is not what we do. We don't we don't treat people the way that things have been happening in the world, and I think that it's become very skewed. I see so many that have so much hate, and I don't think that they have stopped and looked. There's so many that walk around with blinders of hate on, and they're just thinking of themselves. But we have to worry about everybody too. And that's that is in my essentialness what a Canadian has always been like. We've always been the friendly, the kind, the caring, the peacemaker. And so this ultimate attack that is happening on us, I know has affected everyone, and it hasn't been good. And some of us are feeling it physically and mentally, and it's draining. It is draining to see what is happening to people. And I just truly wish that we would stop and look and say, what is the better option? And I know people are tired of the Liberals. I get that. I have to say there was things that I didn't agree with Justin, but there was a lot of things I did agree to. I know it wasn't popular. I get that. But for what had happened during that government, I think the man did an amazing job. And for what we are seeing in the numbers of true numbers of how our country is benefiting, how we are, still in top percentages, this telling us that Canada is broken and we're not, is getting old. It is so Trump in telling us the story of, oh, this is what we are, but we're not. We are not. The numbers are showing us that we are not broken. Please don't listen to what that rhetoric that he's spewing. So there, sorry, done.
That was well said.
Thank you.
Well said. Axeman, welcome to the show. Could I get your rough age and roughly where in the world you're from? And I just want to throw this out there for everybody. Please join in the panel. When you are not speaking, please have your mic off so everybody can be heard. State your point, make it clear and concise, please, and allow everybody to chime in. So, Axeman, welcome to the show. What's your age and where are you from?
I'm 40 plus, and I live in Central Alberta.
Central Alberta. Alrighty, we were just talking about Alberta. What's your perspective?
I think the UCP are trying to hemorrhage as much money as they can get out of the Alberta economy, give it to their friends, and leave a mess for the NDP to clean up. And when the NDP gets voted in, they can sit there and blame the NDP for all the problems, just like they did last time. And as the NDP fixes things, they only have 4 years to do it. People will vote back in the next Conservative Party because I don't think it'll be the UCP. They'll have to dissolve and rebrand themselves. And then they'll bask in the glory of what the hard work the NDP put in. And it sucks because they're just wasting and wasting and wasting. They're trying to privatize everything. They tried to privatize our lab work with Dynalife. They gave that up for a year, which they had to rehire or restructure people to work with Dynalife, and then that ended up costing them $100 million, where they took on $60 million of Dynalife's debt and gave Dynalife $30 million for an attempted try for a year. And that's one example of how privatization will not work in Canada. And they're trying to put in Christian hospitals that are refusing to do certain cares that people need. And it's sickening to watch the house burn down and the government to throw up their hands in the air and say they don't know what's happening on. They know exactly what's going on, and they're just corrupt, and or at least I hope they're corrupt. Otherwise, they're just the biggest idiots in the world. So, it sucks to watch and see all the money get drained out of the province where it could be helping.
Axeman, well said. Thanks for chiming in there. Honey, I'm going to go to you in just a minute, and then Sasquatch, I'll catch up with you. But I had a guest, unfortunately, that I had to let go the other night, and essentially that was one of the problems is we have to have a discourse, yes, but the fact that somebody can still come up here and defend what is going on in Alberta and defend Danielle Smith, that to my mind is pretty amazing at this point, because I simply don't see on a citizen's level where are the citizens winning in Alberta. But again, it goes back to, my diatribe at the beginning is that in spite of things in a lot of ways do going very well for Canadians, we are still at this point where this gap between the rich and the poor has basically um, heated up the poor people to the point where they aren't looking at common sense anymore and are simply going where they're being directed. And that's the part that, it's one thing for some of us old fuckers to be a little bit brainwashed, but what concerns me is that how much of our youth we're losing to this idealism. Honey, I'm going to go to you. Welcome to the show. Could I get a rough age and a rough location for you? Honey, I'm going to turn your mic off there.
Is that me? You're
There you
talking
are.
to Honey
Yep.
Badge. Sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the healthcare system, right? Like I live
Honey, I got to interrupt you for just one sec. Could I get an age and a rough location for you, please?
I'm 50 years old and I live in northern Alberta.
You're in northern Alberta. Alrighty. So let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I just touch on what was said last there, a little bit about the healthcare system being privatized. Like I came out here a long, long time ago, like 30 some years ago, right? And I remember it was different for me because I came from the province of Ontario, where I was born and raised, right? And we had to pay, and I wasn't used to that. And I mean, it wasn't really too much. But you know what? The one thing that I noticed is when I was a kid growing up and I was riding my dirt bike and I broke my wrist, or, you know what I mean? Like it wiped out or split my head open at the farm. Man, we sat in there for hours and hours. And I've yet to have those kinds of experiences in Alberta. I'm yet to have those. And I think it is because, and I don't know how the pricing works on it. Now, I've heard a few different things here, and I don't think Danielle Smith's to blame for it. I mean, she can't run every single aspect of the whole province. Like, there's got to be people that look after things, you see? But I don't think that the privatization is such a bad thing, because the people, what they complain about the most, and I still have family in Ontario, is the wait times. And the wait times are incredible. Like I got old family, like my parents are like 70s, and they go in with chest issues and they get told, well, come in next Thursday. It's like, are you kidding me, man? These are chest issues. These are breathing problems. I mean,
So, Honey Badger,
you don't
Honey
wait
Badger, I'm going to agree with you because I'm actually from Ontario. My parents are 70. And like in Ontario, it took forever to get my parents are in their 70s for health issues. And you were talking 6, 9, 12 months for an appointment.
exactly.
Now, everybody in Nova Scotia bitches about their health care. And I get it. If you're from Nova Scotia, you've not seen Ontario, it sucks. But I'm telling you right now, I get appointments within 30 days. It's insanely how fast they are. Yet they scream, oh my God, it's horrible out here. I'm like, you haven't lived in Ontario, have you? Because for me to get the same appointment, it's 6 months.
Yep.
I've known multiple people in Ontario who have died from complete solvable cancer
It's way
because of waiting lists.
Well, as a Nova Scotian, I am waiting currently to see two surgeons. One is a neurosurgeon. I need neck surgery. There's nothing else that
How
can
long
be
have you
done for
waited?
me. And I now am waiting on a 2-year list.
You know
So,
what, darling? I appreciate that it's bad, and I agree with you that there's multiple things in Nova Scotia to be fixed. I'm telling you, in Ontario, where a majority of the population in Canada is, it's a lot longer. So, like, yes, Nova Scotia needs help. I agree
That
with
was
you.
just
I am not
one.
saying it's perfect. Yeah,
That's
no,
just
no.
one I've been
I
waiting for. I waited 22 years for an MRI, and they finally sent me to a privatized clinic that the hospital or that the province paid for to find out what should have been done 22 years ago. So please, trust me, I
so
have
hold on.
waited
Okay.
years for
All
this.
right, guys, hang on, guys. I'm going to ask everybody to mute their mics here for a minute, please, because we're completely off topic to where I wanted to be. Where I want to bring the conversation back to is we are seeing these threads of ultranationalism arise in every single country, including here in Canada, and it is being fueled predominantly by people like Danielle. Now, I get one of the troubles and the issues that I have is conservatives run more than half of the provinces, and they have basically unanimously decided that healthcare is something that they want to devalue. That is all I'm going to add to that conversation. So I'm going to swing this back around. I want to know, what is it about the youth? Why are we losing young people to these ultra-nationalistic ideas? Because at the end of the day, what we should realize from history is these ultra-nationalist ideas have never been successful long term. They never have been. So, how do we change the narrative here in Canada, and what do we do here in Canada to avoid losing more of our youth to these types of idealisms? Now, absolutely, the healthcare system is one of the things that add to it. But as I said, I firmly believe that so much of this has been manufactured by conservatives, by Republicans, in
Jesus.
order to get young people out, 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 and getting onto these nationalistic ideas. Miss Radical, and then I'll go to you, Just Scott.
I think that so the conservatives should be congratulated for their long game. This was something they've been playing probably since before we had our own children. When I got into education and I started teaching, we watched a mass exodus of people that took their children to homeschool. A lot of those um, a lot of those individuals, those children, were radicalized in Alberta through the Stelmach Institute, all sorts of different things. So we've got a lot going for us. People have chosen to weaponize their children as they raise them. They also did it in churches across Canada. I remember going to church years ago, and I remember the pastor pushing Harper right on the pulpit. So this is the long game that they've been playing. And I think that as if Canadians have the opportunity again to keep power, I think we need to look to our educational system to kind of undo some of the damage that's been hoisted upon these poor kids, because honestly they don't deserve this. Our children have been weaponized against us, and I think it teaches me something else. For all of us people that didn't have faiths, maybe the one thing we should have started doing was working on keeping community and getting out there with our friends and our family and our neighbors and having our kids touch grass more together as community. And even though we don't go to church every Sunday, we need to be coming together and making our church our community. That's how we fix the problem.
Alrighty. Just Scott, I'm going to have you hold for just a second, a little bit of site maintenance here. If you're just joining the show, welcome aboard, everybody. The show is Radicalized. I am your host, Mr. Radical. Remember, folks, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. What I'm hoping for tonight is that somebody joins the panel here. I'm going to leave one box open. I'm hoping that somebody who is not from North America here can pop into the panel, invite yourself in, and get a little bit more international perspective on what we're talking about here. So, just Scott, go ahead and have your say.
Oh, okay. For Miss Radical, any church that supports any political agenda, I don't care what side it is, should lose her status. Okay? So just saying that alone. As for your saying for community and supporting local to bring us back, everything politics has done in the last 40 years has been opposite to that. It's more support of rely on the federal government, not local. So, like everything that you just stated is completely opposite of what federal government's been trying to do. Like, legitimately. Like, it's insane right now that we are shocked at the position Canadians are right now, that we keep voting in what feels good versus what is best for Canada. Like, listen, guys, multiple times hard decisions have to be done, and we haven't voted for those hard decisions. We voted for what feels good. And guess what? We now have a guy in the States to take us over. Now, I don't want that. I don't want EU. I don't want to be part of the 51st state at all. I'm against it all. The problem is, I don't think a majority of Canadians are willing to stand up to what it takes to survive this. I really don't. I see all these posts saying EU. Oh, we can join the EU. We can join the 51st.
Those guys are.
You're all.
Oh, hey, hang
Go
on.
ahead, honey.
No,
No. Let
no,
honey
hang
talk.
on.
Let honey
No,
talk.
hang on. No. I'm not bouncing this back and forth. Gentlemen, we will take turns. I will designate the turns. Honey, you will get your shot. Sasquatch, welcome to the show. You haven't had a chance to chime in.
Well, as the only person on this panel that seems to be under 50, what young people want, I'm going to tell you right now. I'm an angry millennial. I am living in my parents' basement here and I'm struggling. And I'm an equipment operator with no kids and good credit. And I'm going to tell you, kids are angry because they cannot afford to fucking live. I've been out here busting my ass as an equipment operator, and I'm telling you, I work with a lot of these 19, 22, 28-year-old kids in blue collar work. They're fucking angry because we can go out and pull 12-hour days, 6, 7 days a week, and we are living in our parents' basements, driving beat off 20-year-old cars, and we're mad. I'm mad with them. Am I going to be radicalized to the right? Absolutely not, because I'm not ignorant, but a lot of these guys are, and I listen to them all the time, and they sit there and Trudeau this and Trudeau that. And even when you sit there and they go, well, I can't afford anything and I can't afford gas. And I'm like, yeah, don't vote conservative because they're not going to help you. They don't understand. And they're so tired, busy, angry, hopeless. I'm sorry, everyone up on this panel is in a very, very different boat from anyone that's under like 35, 40 years old. Very different boat. I'm sure a lot of you own your homes. You're going to have some savings. You might have investments. We don't have shit. I couldn't invest $50 into my RSP right now if I wanted to. I had to bank my RSP to move out of Prince George to get a U-Haul to move into my parents' basement. And I'm sitting here educated, very experienced, skilled labor, making smart financial decisions, sitting here in my $1,200 01 Cavalier, and I couldn't get approved for a mortgage with a credit score over 800, working 20 hours a day at 2 jobs running loader. That's why we're fucking mad. And I'm sorry, the older folks, I'm sorry, your complacency had a lot to do with it, and they're angry at older folks. They're not willing to listen. They're not necessarily willing to listen to somebody that owns their house outright. They've got 2 cars, a side-by-side, a boat. They're going to Mexico every year. They don't want to fucking listen to you because you don't understand what we are facing. I'm sorry. There are older folks struggling. I know it's not easy. You guys are in a very, very different boat than we are. And I'm really fucking mad about it. I'm pissed. I'm sitting here in my parents' driveway. They've got 4 or 5 vehicles that I might add my dad can't even work on. I have to work on his vehicles for him. But he was able to buy a house with no credit in the 80s, use those houses, flip them, and buy a bunch of equipment that me and my brother had to wrench on for him. How does that, like, do you understand why we're mad? We have all the skill, all the drive, all the work ethic, and then you turn on Facebook and Becky's 55. This young generation doesn't want to work. Honey, you worked in an office for 40 hours a week. I worked that in 2 days. Don't tell me shit. Like, don't tell me shit. And you got to go back to your house that you own with a lawn and a garden and your kids and go on vacation. No, like, we're pissed. That's where I'm going to leave that. Young people are fucking mad. We are really mad, and we are not really in a position to listen to people that had it 10 times easier than us, give us these solutions about community. Where was the community 20 years ago watching this housing crisis grow? Watching our country get monopolized. Y'all were drooling in front of hockey games and woohoo, living the dream. We're pissed at you guys. I'll be honest, you guys personally, no, you're all good folks, but in a generalized statement, young people do not want to hear older people talk about it because we're really, really bitter and pissed off. And when they talk to us, we hear it and we're like, you guys are on another fucking planet. Like, when I hear my
Yep.
parents talk, they are on another fucking delusional Disneyland. Wee-hee, life's a
Yep.
vacation. Wee-hee. And it's like, I just want to punch a hole in the drywall. It's like, oh my God, I wish I could be that stupid and have the house paid off. Must be fucking nice. Not know how to change my oil. Must be fucking nice. But I need to run across, so I'm going to drop my mic here for a minute. I need to run across and talk to my neighbor quickly here.
Alrighty, Sasquatch, thank you. Miss Kemp, Miss Radical, I'm gonna get you to respond quick, and then Beautiful, I'm gonna go to you, and then Honey, you after.
Thank you. I just want to make this really quick. You know, not all of us are in the same position as Sasquatch's parents. We had special needs kids, and we couldn't get a mortgage. They would not look at us come hell or high water. No matter how much we had to put down, no matter how much we did, we would not get looked at as like for a mortgage. It wasn't until the housing rose and we had no place to rent that our whole family, grandma radical, baby radical, kids radicals, young people radical, we all had to get together and buy a house to give our whole family security. And I'm sorry, Sasquatch, that people have abandoned you, but it's not all of us. We're not all like that. And, you know, we got kids living in our basement. And I tell my kids every day, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this is happening to you. It's not fair and it's not right. And I tell them often, let me move in the basement. You live upstairs. Like, whatever you need to do to feel better about things, let me help you. Because this is
Alrighty.
a be time.
Yeah, I mean, uh, Miss Radical and I just bought our first house 2 years ago. We are first-time homeowners, and I'm 53, so I was over 50 before I ended up. So where she's coming from, I get because we lived that struggle for a long time. So Beautiful, I'm gonna get you, McGilvery. I will get to you right after Honey. I promise you, I'm not leaving you behind. I see you. So Beautiful, you want to chime in? And
Actually,
then,
I
Honey,
would
I'll
love
get to
to.
you after.
Funny you guys mentioned this, and I don't know, maybe it's a, a Gen X thing, because we are the generation who's still caring for our parents. And for the last 25 years, I have played caregiver. I cared for my father in the last 18 months of his life with bone cancer. And for the last 20 years, I have cared for my mother who has congestive heart failure, end stage osteorheumatoid, and a few other form of arthritis, who is basically immobile and might stay in the same position for 23 hours of the day. I myself have poor health due to a few car accidents and a congenital condition I didn't know about. So I appreciate the situation that she is in, but I have had to give myself sacrificed. And now I don't know if, when unfortunately she passes, if I'll have a home,
Hmm.
because this home is still hers. And because of health, and had to cover things with, while yes, my health care for my father's prescriptions were covered and hers as well, additions and modifications had to be made to the home, which meant, yes, that they had to extend lines of credit. My mother is 82 years of age with a mortgage.
Yeah,
So
yep.
no, He doesn't own her home. I appreciate what you are saying, Sasquatch. And I have had to provide the savings that I had towards helping with modifications towards this home because the bank has still the mortgage on this. And quite honestly, I don't know what is going to happen because she does have congestive heart failure, and it is not something that is curable. It is treatable, but conditions of stress, hearing about what is happening in the news, she doesn't know from one day to the next because she receives home care every
Yep.
day.
Yep.
There is a lot. It is a struggle. And I have the savings that I had because I did work for telecommunications companies. I worked for 2 major telecommunications companies in this country, and I made bank. I could sell you anything, and I'm telling you to eat it up. I was that good. And I had a nice little nest egg, which is now gone because, again, it was gone towards the care of my parents. So I appreciate that you are living in the basement or you can't leave your home. And I have to tell you, that's where I'm living too. My basement isn't even finished. I got an open ceiling. So, yeah, yeah. So I understand where you're coming from. And I'm 51 years of age. I am single. I never have had children. So I don't have all of these things. I still got to pay these taxes, though, and all this stuff. I understand when people talk about this. I, in particular, because I'm in Nova Scotia, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the situation that we have between the isthmus, that is the land connection, disintegrating between us and New Brunswick.
Yep.
And a certain person who leads a political party in this country decided to spend quite a bit of time hanging around that area with a certain group that is characterized on the CSIS list and hung out with them. That said a lot to me right there. What are you doing,
Yep.
buddy? Staggering out of a
Yep.
trailer looking like Leahy. It was an insult to Jim Dunn, his memory, I got to tell you. And I was very upset. And I thought, what are you doing hanging out with people who made horrible, violent comments of things towards your wife, and you're hanging out with them? What are you doing?
Yep. Yep.
What the hell are you doing? That right there said a lot to me. As for the whole point of this is part of this indoctrination because they're the hate. This is the building up of this. And I have to say, I do agree. And even some cases, and I've seen it again, going back to the province of Alberta, the Catholic Church has a massive hold on that province, on their education, on their health care now. Like, that's incredible.
Yep.
To know that women's health is designated to 2 areas. And you know how many women are in that province. And you guys know how big that province is. It's massive. 2 centers for women's health. And we know the kind of health that women could be seeking in some of those cases. And they're only done in 2 locations now. If you're in the northern part of that province, you're not getting there.
Yep.
What's going to happen to you, right? There is a lot that needs to be looked at. And please, for the love of God, read your history books. 61 days, people. 61 days is all it took. Please know your history. I know I sound old, and I have an education and background. God, I sound like I talk about my parents from years ago. And trust me, guys, I get it now. I totally get it. But please know what you are looking at and weigh the pros and the cons. Please read real information. Don't go down the rabbit hole. And ask questions of people. Ask people that know the answers. Read the things on the House of Commons. Please check out the information because the information is there. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and I want to reiterate that point that so much of what our government does is transparent for the trouble of going to look it up. So, honey, I'm going to get you to chime in, and then McGilvery, I'm coming back up to you, and then Jess Scott, you'll have your say. Honey, go ahead. Are you there?
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead, honey.
I just wanted to chime in on a couple things there. And like the first, like we talked about a little bit child care, right? I mean, all points were very valid, right? But I wanted to chime in, just my opinion is all it is. But I mean, I've got for a guy my age, I got pretty young kids, eh? And I had a plan, and of course, whatever, every good plan has something else to it, right? But my kids come home and they tell me about what they are taught at school, and some of it has nothing to do with education. And they do go to Catholic schools, right? But
Yep.
even the school, like they're taught values that I don't value in my house. Do you see what I'm getting at here? And I know everybody's going to be different, but what I'm saying is the children do go to school, but I mean there's an extra curriculum above math, science, geography, chemistry, physics, and phys ed, football teams, like what kids should be doing. Like it's almost like there's a part of it, it's indoctrination. And I don't agree with that part. So, I mean, I raised my family like that. I want to touch on that about the school system. As far as the Canada thing went, you know, like I love Canada. I mean, I still do. I'm a Canadian through and through, right? My whole family defended this country for a couple wars, right? A few wars. And, you know, like, it's like that. But, you know, I look at it now and it's like, I look at my paycheck and it's like, you know, man, I'm giving away almost 50%. Do you know what I mean? And it's just the way it is. And I'm like, you know, you hear somebody coming out of the United States and they're saying, well, we're up to a certain amount. We're not even going to income tax you. Do you know what I mean? And then they got these benefits. And like, I mean, certain people, like, I mean, I'm one of them, honestly. Like, if Canada was offering that, like, I mean, sure. But for what I'm paying and what I see going on and the things that are happening that aren't good, like tent cities around and stuff, and money's going out the door, and we got people here already that we can't take care of. And it's like, well, I don't know what's going on anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand, right? What the thing is, I think one of it's not so much as joining the US. I think it's just the benefits that the guy's offering. Personally, that's what I honestly think it is. Anyways, I'm done with my little thing.
Alrighty. Thanks, honey. Okay, just McGilvery.
Thanks, folks.
McGilvery, welcome to the show. Thanks for being so patient. Can I get an age and a rough location for you?
It's 48 years old, and I'm in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia.
Right on. Welcome to the show.
Neighbor.
You've had a chance to listen in.
I have.
What do you have to say?
I'd love to touch on a lot of the things that folks have said. First of all, I'm glad I didn't have to go right after Sasquatch. I'm glad I waited. Actually, I don't have any ill will certainly about waiting a few guests after that absolute mic drop from Sasquatch, and those concerns are very real. And I think maybe it was just Scott who said a little bit earlier that, you know, what we're seeing is the result of 40 years of bad politics. And while I think that's true, I think that's very true, but probably in exactly the opposite way that Scott thinks that. In that over the last 40 years, what we've seen are the disastrous effects of trickle-down economics, of Reaganomics, of like, you know, the sort of like the axis of Margaret Thatcher, Brian Mulroney, and Ronald Reagan, and they were sort of the harbingers of our descent into neoliberalism, where we completely abandoned the stick for dealing with corporations and decided to only use the carrot. And so that's led to 40 years of us being told that we can't have nice things, that the things that make our society run well, that we're the proudest of, we're gonna fire sale them to balance the budget. We're gonna sell off Petro-Canada. We're gonna sell off Nova Scotia Power. And it doesn't work. And this is the thing. So people are really tied up in terms of their self-esteem, I think, in this country, in their work product, you know what I mean? In what they've, you know, so a lot of people are feeling like if public money is being spent to fix some of these problems, that it's sort of taken something away from them, that if somebody else got something and they don't feel like they worked as hard. And so there's a lot of like pissing contests between professions about like, oh, that person's job is not a real job, or this person's job isn't a real job. And like, so I think that's a lot of why people are feeling this aggravated feeling about it. And I'll say this because we've talked about generational sort of conflicts. We've talked about, so I'm 48. And so maybe because I just came under the 50-year Sasquatch set the bar at 50 and I'm just under. So maybe that's why I'm feeling charitable about it. But here's what I'll say, is that ideas did this. You know what I mean? Like if you put in a young generation of people doing the same things that those people did, you will still have the same outcome. But if you put whatever people doing different things than we did, doing different things than neoliberalism, and just like we're to the point now where we just like, our leaders are openly groveling before corporations for people to have the basics of life. And you have like
Yep.
things like in the Northwest Territories where one REIT owns 40% of the rental real estate. This is crazy. Like we're not that far away from this sort of like oligarchic, near feudal dystopia that is unfolding in the United States right now. And so I think that Beautiful is right to warn people that there are definitely historical parallels to what's happening in the United States, and that we should definitely be paying attention. But absolutely, just getting back to Sasquatch, like young people have absolutely been sold a false bill of goods. Like we think our society runs on the proposition that if you work hard, that you will succeed and you will have what you need to survive. And it's just not true anymore. And
Yep.
I think that's why you're seeing an increase in crime. I think you're seeing, some people are just, they're doing it out of desperation. And I think some people are just like, you'd have to be this is a terrible deal. Like this, I'm going to endure the indignities of both the horrible working conditions in food service jobs, or the way people are treated and looked down on in those professions by people in professions just above theirs on the food chain. That people, you know what? I'm going to go steal cars. Like I'm going to go steal. This guy has a banging car, and I'm going to go steal. I can see almost how people are just like, this is a ridiculously raw deal. Like it's just a lie, but it didn't used to be a lie. This is the thing. We used to do things in this country that made these things possible. We used to invest in our country. We used to invest public funds in housing. And people talk about common sense solutions to the housing market. But when you say, the government should build more houses and sell them cheaply and rent them cheaply, people are aghast. Or that we let banks decide who has access to housing. Think about that for a second. Landlords are making a lot of the money they're making because the banks will tell someone who has been paying $1,200 a month in rent for 5 years that they can't afford an $800 a month mortgage, and they do it all the time.
Yep.
And it's preposterous.
Yep.
There's the things that it has increasingly gotten worse and worse and worse. Young people have absolutely been sold up the river and sold a false bill of goods by people. And I think it's to an extent because it appeared to work at the time, because we made this country unappealing to have kids in. That's why I wanted to also mention about Beautiful's comments is that the reason these problems haven't become manifest, the reason, again, so the cuts to public housing by the Martin and Chrétien governments, and the cuts to the Canada Health Transfer escalator rate by the Harper government. Okay, there's lots of blame to go around, and there's lots of partisan hate to be had. But just the funny part is that there's all kinds of liberal fuck ups you can point at if you're a conservative, and if you're a liberal, there's all kinds of conservative fuck ups too. There's all kinds of things they cut, all kinds of things they did, cheap little things they did. To try and make it look like they were good fiscal stewards, but they were just hacking away at the foundations of our society the whole time. And that's why there's nothing left now that we finally got caught up via immigration. Like, again, we stopped having kids in the 80s, right? So like, we were down to like 1.3, 1.4 children per woman, which is how they measure it. Fecundity, and it has to be 2.1 or you won't have a tax base anymore and your economy will collapse. And Japan and South Korea are seeing the same thing happen, where like they've created these sort of like, you have all mod cons, but it's an utterly miserable society, and nobody wants to bring a kid into this society when they're going to be a debt slave for the rest of their first 20 or 30 years of their life because they tried to get an education. It's outrageous. Why would anyone do it? I don't blame, and we're hearing from people in the chat right now who are had lots of chance to have kids, and just like, how the fuck do I pull that off? Like, how do I, pardon my French, but like, how do I in this situation? Like, why would I bring? And it's only gotten worse over that whole period of time, because again, they've cut and cut and cut at the things that made our society work, and so now all we have left is decay. And no one has any real ideas, and none of the mainstream parties really have much in the way of daylight between them when it comes to policy. They all interact with the economy the same way. The NDP are busy trying to be the Liberal Party, but people want the real thing, and now the Liberal Party is ascendant again, so the NDP just shed half of their vote share nearly overnight after being steady at 20 points for 4 years. It's disastrous. We desperately need brand new leadership and a real reconsideration of how the economy works. And a renewed willingness to use the stick instead of the carrot. I mean, I think we should not only should we renationalize Nova Scotia Power, I think we should wipe the investors out so thoroughly that no one ever tries again. And I think that we should make it way, way risky to try and own national, things that ought to belong to the people. If a private entity thinks about they want to own that, we should make that look like a very unattractive proposition for them.
Yep. But that's been, I mean, that's literally been the conservative. Uh, that was a great delivery, McGilvery. Really appreciate that. But that's been
Much.
the conservative game plan roughly for the last 30, 40 years, hasn't it? Anything that is going to prop up the government, make the government look good, and provide an income into the government, the conservatives have wanted to get rid of it. And I mean, it started, we can go back as far as the Avro, we can go even that far back to where it seems, why do the Saudis control Canada's wheat board? Just to name a few out there on the block, but this run toward privatization has been pretty consistent from the conservative and the Republican side now for decades.
It's true, and I do think privatization is definitely one part of it, but I do think that there's, like I said, lots of blame to go around. Like as traditionally, like the liberals are bigger financial hawks and fiscal hawks than the conservatives are. Like frequently, because I think as crony capital doesn't drive itself. You've got to
Yep.
put money in the kitty, and those contracts that the donors are expecting have got to materialize. And so it's not actually that cheap to be a crony capitalist. And so you'll see the debt creep up under conservative governments and then level off as the liberals come in and do austerity. And so austerity is definitely another part of, like, this is the thing, is like we in Nova Scotia now, and Beautiful, you can attest to this, we're accustomed to emergency rooms that are not open. We're accustomed to a power grid that's not reliable. We're running out of time for the people that remember what it used to be like. This, you know what I mean? Like it'll come a time when people just forget. They'll just forget that it didn't, that the power grid didn't go down if a flea farts in Gabaroos. You know what I mean? Like it's disgraceful, and so it's not just privatization. Privatization, that's a real serious thing that's happening in little tiny bits. It's a death of a thousand cuts happening at the provincial level. But it's austerity. It's being told that, like, no, you can't invest in people. You can't make sure that people have what they need in order to thrive. And no, you have to punish them for trying. It's this sort of thinking, and it's an absolutely bipartisan event. There's lots of blame to go around for both the Liberal and Conservative parties.
Yeah, and I would agree. Uh, Beautiful. I'm going to have you. I just need to do my plug for the show here, and then I'm going to get to you. Beautiful. I'm going to hear from you afterwards, and then Miss Radical, and then Just Scott. I'll have you chime in. If you're just tuning in, welcome to the show. The show is Radicalized. I am your host, Mr. Radical, here on the Beaver Politics Network. Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Beaver Politics has shows multiple times a day, 7 days a week. Whatever your flavor of host, you can probably find one here on Beaver Politics, including myself and Miss Radical. If you miss an episode or have to cut an episode short, you can catch it on YouTube the following day. So, Miss Radical, I'll have you go, and then Just Scott, we'll hear from you.
You know what? I'm going to pass off my spot to Just Scott because I just think he's been waiting for a bit and he's excited to share. So,
Alrighty. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you very much. Yes. Listen. Okay, so because I vote conservative does not mean I agree with them. So, like, here's the thing. I'm the first person in this live to say I blame everyone since Mulroney. Every leader that has sold us out. And Mulroney was conservative, okay? So, like, let's be honest. I'm blaming everybody on this one. And now I'm going to blame voters because Canadians have a short-term memory and they vote within 6 months of an election, not paying attention to how bad the government's screwing them over. And I'm saying that the latest government, and listen, Justin did what multiple governments have done. Like, you can't blame him for this. But they took advantage. But the problem is that we're now the end of the edge of the cliff. So now everyone's looking at what Justin did. But, like, this is something that happened for decades. They brought us to this edge, okay? And, like, everyone can scream about healthcare and privatization and everything else. Great. I understand it. But no premier of any province tried to solve it. They just kicked it down the road to the next person. This has been a constant kick to the next person. So now we're at a dilemma right here. Do you fall off the cliff or do you put your heels in? And unfortunately, to put your heels in to solve the problem with healthcare, our economy, housing, everything, to put your heels in is going to hurt so bad. I don't think anyone understands how bad this is going to hurt. And I want them to hurt this because I want this to happen. I want Canada to be sovereign, proud, free, and away from all this. But I don't think a majority of Canadians have it to do this. I don't think anyone even understands how badly we're in trouble right now. Like, I'm not an economist. I just read a lot of paperwork. Okay? I am not educated for this, but I read a lot of stuff. And I'm telling you right now, from an uneducated person reading in the financial position we're in right now, I don't care political party, guys. I don't care. Justin, Pierre Poilievre, it means nothing to me. We're in a lot of trouble. And we have to hold the leaders accountable. So if you vote for Carnier, fine, vote for him, but hold his nuts to the fire, because I don't think a majority of the Canadians understand what troubles we're in right now. Like, legitimately, this is a do or die, guys. There's a reason why we've got an idiot in the States doing what he's doing. Because financially, he can. We're in a lot of trouble because we put ourselves in this position. So don't sell ourselves out to the EU. Don't sell ourselves out to the States, guys. But you have to hold the leaders accountable for what they've done to us, because we're in a lot of trouble. Like, guys, I don't care who you vote for. I don't care the party. But understand that you have to stop voting on emotions and vote to make sure that we survive this, because Canada's in a lot of trouble.
Right on. Thank you, Scott. Beautiful. I have to apologize. I said I was going to go to you, and I completely botched that up. So my apologies, young lady. It is your show. And then, honey, I'm going to get to you, and then sorry, honey, I'm going to go to you, and then Sasquatch, I see that you're back. We'll get back to you after that. So beautiful. My apologies. Please go ahead.
Absolutely fine. I'm totally okay with that. No, I was actually just going to I was in totally agreement with what McGilvery was saying there, because in talking about the closures of hospitals and ERs, and again, yes, like I'm on the Eastern Shore. So you are probably very aware of Twin Oaks Hospital. My mother worked at Twin Oaks for years. I remember one night sitting here and thinking something is not right all of a sudden. And I called 911. To be told, as my throat is closing over and I can't speak and I can't breathe, well, there's no ambulance. There's no ambulance. I literally sat in my house for an hour before I could get in contact with somebody. So to get a ride to drive 130 clicks to the Dartmouth General Hospital, which is not that far from me, but far enough when you can't breathe and you're going to die, unalive accidentally, for an allergy, right? That's a scary thought. It's not something that you want to face. So yes, the healthcare system is tanking, and it is a lot. But we have it's a chain reaction, and I am not knocking any person in the healthcare system, because both of my parents were healthcare workers. But in seeing in the last 25 years, we see that everybody, if you've noticed, is bumped up a level. We now have NPs, the nurse practitioner. The nurse practitioner is now the doctor. Now, they can't provide you every medication, but in some cases, they can provide you some medication that has been legalized in Canada, all across the country. And that's a new thing. That wasn't supposed to happen. The RN of old is now the administration. The LPN is the RN. The CCA is the LPN. So, everything is changing. Everybody is looking for more money. But the whole system is going like this, and we have no doctors. They don't stay here long enough. Then they leave. So what do we do? I know people say we don't have enough places and care for our own people that are here. I understand that. But if we don't bring new people in, i.e., the medical people, which again, we all need a doctor or someone to take us, take care of us. Because no matter what, you still got to be checked out, even if you're healthy. So, like, if we don't have these people coming in here, what are we going to do? It's a pyramid, and you have to have a solid foundation. If you don't have a solid foundation, well, it's going to crumble. And exactly everything that Scott had just said is accurate. We have to hold the accountability to these people. Where is this money going? This money is supposed to be here in these pots. We all know that a certain premier bought an election. Everybody got a $200 check. You don't think that was buying your vote? Is he going to do what he was supposed to do? Well, that money was supposed to be your medical. That was supposed to be taken care of how many years ago? So it's affecting us everywhere. Definitely hold the accountability of the premiers. We cannot simply blame the federal government for it, because they're provided this money. But if the premiers are not utilizing it, and they're having their fun with their corporate guys, that's affecting us. They're getting the benefits of going to concerts and hockey games and stuff. What are we getting? Right?
Yep.
They're getting skidoos and going with your buddies to your cabin while you're renting it out to some other people. What are we getting? We have a leader of a party who, is a landlord. And we're paying him when, he has a home provided for him. His children are fed. They receive the medical care. They have all of the dental. Yep. But he's going to deny it to everybody else. Your health is a foundation. Going to the dentist. Do you know how many cases of oral cancer are picked up? And that doesn't mean that you have to be a person who ever picks up a cigarette or any other thing. Oral cancer is a serious thing that a lot of people are being picked up on. But it's, what are we drinking? What are we eating? Right? Yep. There are so many connections to health. And I think we need to make a better foundation that people need to get that taken care of. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, beautiful. Well stated. Honey, we're going to go to you, and then Sasquatch will go to you.
Hello.
Hello, honey.
Hey. Yeah, I was just going to say, just as an Albertan, the way I think a lot of the people I know anyways see the way things are going here, with all the issues we're talking about all combined into the same kind of thing, right? And it's I think we're all paying a lot in taxes, and there's not a lot coming back in for some reason. I mean, do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I think like beautiful mentioned, one of the troubles is we've got a disassociation between what's happening federally and what's happening provincially, because we know at least 2 out of the conservative provinces had money at their discretion to put into healthcare and simply refused to do that.
Yeah. I'm unclear on where that's all going with the healthcare money in Alberta. I've read things back and forth both ways, right? I did see Danielle Smith even ask for a third auditor to come in and to try and take a look at it, because she said that, from my limited knowledge, she said that that issue really wasn't under her plate at the time, right? And there was somebody else that was supposed to be looking after this that she trusted. I seen that. So I'm not saying anything one way or the other. But if you're innocent, you're definitely going to be I don't care what you look at. That's why I look at that for healthcare in Alberta. The other thing in Alberta is I think that in Alberta here, I find that, in all the people I've known, across countries and listened to, across the provinces even, right? And, Alberta's got a lot of opportunity out here, and it just seems a shame to shut it down. And, to try and be those people don't believe the right thing. It's the people out here, they work very hard. Nobody has ever left Alberta that never went back and said, oh, that was the easiest time in my life. I'm guaranteeing you that. I mean, and it's just the way it is. I mean, it's a
Yep.
very hard province to live in. Um, they
Had
pay a
12 years in the oil patch. Yeah, I know what you mean.
high amount of
But
tax.
I will ask you this though, honey. One of the troubles that I have with that situationally is when you have a premier like Danielle Smith, who has literally turned back billions of dollars of green energy province in her province to tie the entire economic system in Alberta to oil and gas. If you go to any investor and you said, I want to dump all of my money on this one stock, what is that investment guy going to tell you? He's going to tell you you're crazy. If it pays off, yeah, you're going to win. But if it doesn't pay off, you are done from that moment forward.
Okay. About the wind turbines, that's my forte. All that kind of equipment, honestly.
Right?
Now, I'm going to tell you, those things are more trouble than they're worth. They just are. They don't pay. They just do not pay. I mean, they blow gearboxes out. I mean, the wind's not enough. The gearbox fails. I mean, you got maintenance on them, which is incredible. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it's like, how do you even get rid of it when it's blown up? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things to those, right? I mean, just to
Okay.
start, so wind
Okay,
turbines are
so
really the thing,
I
right?
want to I want to ask this question since you're in that business. Here's one of the troubles I have when people bring out statements, and this isn't knocking your qualifications. I don't know what they are on an intrinsic level, but I will ask this. Do you think that if there hadn't been a consolidated effort by oil and gas for about the last 40 years to make sure that better options than wind turbines?
Oh, 100%.
Go ahead,
I
honey.
mean, 100%. I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, yeah, oil does. It's like, for coal did many years before and then wood did before that, right? It's just the power output to it, right? And I do agree. Like, I think there's, I think they're just kind of stalling and we're using oil and gas, but they're not giving us the other valuable solutions. The rest of them, right at this point, are all invaluable, I believe.
Hmm.
hmm.
Alrighty, honey. Thanks for your viewpoint. Sasquatch, we'll go to you, and then Miss Radical, and then just Scott. We'll go right back down the board here again. So Sasquatch, we'll throw you in. You haven't had a chance talking a bit, and then we'll go to the top of the board and come down.
You betcha. So, we're talking a lot about our federal versus our provincial responsibilities, which we're all, luckily a lot more people are becoming educated about the difference. And it's not all just, oh, Justin Trudeau, this healthcare, this, right, which is great. My question is, on a federal level, how do we start to look at changing our taxation system and not just taxing the rich and not, oh, let's tax this for everybody or axe the tax. I'm talking like the fact that when we look at what the poverty line is for people, like the poverty line for an individual, I don't know, I think it's under 20 grand. Who is living off $1,000 a month? So if we say we want to roll universal basic income, we are using completely outdated numbers. Who in the fuck is living? Poverty line for one person is probably closer to 50 grand for one person. A couple probably closer to 80, 100. If you've got a family of four, I'm thinking 150 to 200,000 is the true poverty line as we define it. So if we don't move the tax brackets, one, we can't tax the rich adequately. If we're going to roll out taxes on higher incomes, well, if I say I'm out wrenching on trucks, okay, I make 180 grand a year, that's not a high tax bracket anymore. That's a middle class person that's able to comfortably live. I shouldn't be taxed high on that. People that are making under like 60, 80 grand a year, you shouldn't be taxing them anything. Christ, they shouldn't be paying anything. Am I crazy? But if you're
No.
making a million, maybe you should be paying, in the 25, 30%. Once you're up into anything over 5 million, you should start pushing towards 40% taxation. It really should. And if you're up in anywhere into the, 7 digits, you're making 10, 15, 20, 30 million, like, I don't know, CEOs, you should be getting taxed. I don't give a fuck, 75%. Because whatever they're using for their business, they're using roads, they have trucks traveling to them, they are using infrastructure. Oh, can you mute your mic, bud? Thank you. And before we start rolling out all of these changes, we have to look at how, if we're having so many goddamn public workers, who the fuck is keeping tabs on these tax break-ins? Like, they're from like 2009. Like, what planet are we on? So if we're going to roll out UBI, if we're going to look at, we've got these dental plans rolling out for people that might be based on income, if we're going to be looking at like seniors, if we're looking at any kind of social programs, disability, child tax, things like this, they have to be based on a realistic tax bracket system. Because even my sister-in-law, so she's in dental, and we were talking because my teeth are quite bad. Like, I've got quite bad teeth now. And I was telling her when I moved back to Prince George and I'm kind of working after school, I'll start picking away. And she goes, well, you have disability tax status because I've got type 1.5 diabetes. She's like, you should look into it. She goes, and I go, well, what's going on where you work? And she goes, most places, most of the dentists in Prince George anyway, will not take those cases on that dental plan because the numbers are based on 2019. So if I go in there and I get 10 grand worth of work, it's based off billing from 6 years ago, from before the pandemic. If I have a remaining balance, that dentist is stuck with me. Not only are they stuck with the bill, but they're stuck with me and they cannot refuse me as a patient for life. So I could go back in and rack up 20 grand, 30 grand and rack up dental bills that, fuck dentists, they make too much money anyway, but they're going to rack up and accrue that debt because they're basing it off of tax brackets and billing from 6 years ago. So the people that want to access that dental care, they're not able to even get it at most dental practices because they don't want to get stuck with that bill. So as we're rolling out these programs, great, throw money at people. We need people to have these social supports. They need to be rolled out with, I don't understand, like, government agencies, no one thought to like go and, consult dentists and talk to them about their billing. No one thought to check in on that. Like, this was rolled out in the last couple of years. No one thought to go and talk to a dentist and see what the billing actually is and update it. Like, am I stupid? I'm just a dumb loader operator. I can figure that out. The billing isn't accurate anymore. Or if we're going to roll out UBI, but if you make more than 20 grand a year, what are you talking about? That person's in absolute abject poverty living in Canada as a single person. Even if maybe you're a single person and you rent a room or you live with family, you're still going to be broke on 20 grand a year. You're going to be, maybe if you can get a bus where you're at, maybe if there's public transportation, you know what I mean? And or somebody is able to work, part-time jobs, so they don't get any kind of supplemental income, but they're still not able to live. So all of the system is so outdated in what the reality of inflation and the cost of living and the cost of housing is in Canada. Like, if you say you went and signed up for disability today and they ask you your housing amount, I bet the most that they'll deduct is probably like $700, $500. Who the hell is paying that for rent? Realistically, somebody on disability that really legitimately may not be able to work at all, or they can work very, very minimal part-time, that person needs that support, and $500 or $750 or whatever it is for rent is not going to cover that person's bills. It's not. So then they're dipping into what's calculated for their hydro, for their phone bill, for their groceries, which are expensive. They might need some kind of public transportation or a vehicle. It's all being deducted from those other parts of their life to pay that additional rent. The people, I don't understand how we can have so many public workers, and why is everything so stupid and outdated? Who is working these jobs? Like, I'm sorry, we need to start putting them through some schooling, or they need to have some kind of a system where they have an economist or somebody with a financial background that is keeping on top of inflation, the rates of change. So if this program is rolling out in 2 years, it needs to be accurate to what the cost of living, or at least close to it, of what that cost of living is actually going to look like, what those tax brackets are actually going to look like for poverty. Otherwise, this is fucking useless. It's all useless. No one's going to be able to be eligible for child tax and UBI and these dental plans. They're not. And we're going to have a bunch of sick Canadians and, parents that can barely afford to feed their kids. They can't house themselves. And it's just ridiculous. And I mean, is it a federal or provincial level? Who the fuck is in charge of taxing the rich? Like, who's in charge of dictating the tax brackets and the taxation? Because whoever that is needs to be fucking fired.
But as just Scott kind of alluded to, and myself, one of the troubles is we have essentially since I believe the 1950s or 60s. Please don't quote me on that. But essentially since that time, we have seen the wealth gap widen between the rich and the poor. This isn't a new thing, but what we are, I believe, seeing is kind of the end result of that long-term game. So, just Scott, I'm going to go to you, and then QW, I'm going to go to you right after. So, just Scott, you wanted to get in, so go ahead.
Oh my God, my head's about to explode. Okay, so, like, guys, everyone's screaming about this wealth gap. You keep voting the people that do this. Conservative, liberal, they both do it. Okay? And then no one holds their politicians to what the standards Canadians want. Like, you're wondering why this rich gap happens? Blame the politicians. They create the laws that are paid for to get to this point. Like, I it drives me mental when everyone starts screaming about, oh, cost of living. Well, why is it so expensive in Canada? We're a good country. We're good people, you know. So why is it so expensive? Okay, let's go back 4 years. Look at the laws that are passed. Talk about real estate bought. Talk about this. Talk about that. And then no one pays attention. This is why it's so expensive in Canada and our economy is gone because we've been living the last, listen, I'm not even going to say 10 years blaming Justin Trudeau. I go back 20 years saying we're living off debt, real estate, and fraudulent taxes for corporations. Like, yes, I vote conservative, but I don't believe everything they say.
Scott, I have to clarify something. Go back to that last statement. What do you mean by fraudulent taxes?
Okay, so fraudulent taxes. So what it is if you've got Magna, which anyone in Ontario knows who Magna is, they bank a politician, and then all of a sudden, certain taxes are cut. And then they get in the federal level, and then they bank a politician. Because, everyone talks about how there's maximum amount that you can donate. But we all know that it's different than that. And, I'm saying conservative when I say Magna, because, we all know they're conservative. So we can nail them for this one. But this is both sides. And unfortunate Canadians, guys, wake up. Politics are every day of the year, where a majority of Canadians wake up 2 months before an election. What makes them feel good, and that's how they elect. This is why we're in this problem right now. I don't know what to tell you. Everyone
Now,
hates
Scott,
Trump.
yeah, I want to ask you a question though about just this particular direction that you're going here. So, the NDP get in Alberta years ago, and essentially the UCP and every iteration of conservatives in Alberta has used those 4 years as a literal punching bag, uh, because the population that they're talking to can't differentiate. Oil prices started to go down 6 months before the NDP got in, but all you ever hear is the NDP were the downfall of Alberta. But I honestly believe that when we're talking about Canadians being blind to it, this is part of the reason is
Okay, so hold
one
on.
party
You're
gets
from
in.
Alberta, right? You live in
Uh,
Alberta?
no, I don't live in Alberta. I spent 17 years there, and my wife was born in Edmonton.
Okay, so you're worried about Alberta politics versus national politics right now. correct?
No, I'm asking about this game that you're talking about but I believe that game is being manufactured in large part by
I
conservatives.
agree. No, not by conservatives. Hold on, dude. It's there's actually, if you look at it, no party's actually different from the other when it comes to what they want in the long run. Like to say I'm liberal, so therefore I'm better than the rest, or conservative, I'm better than the rest, is a joke. Because
Agreed.
eventually they all go to the way of a crony capitalism. All of them do. So, like, when are we going to wake up that it's not policies or politics that are screwing us? Like, listen, I'm for capitalism, truly for capitalism. Like, legitimately, capitalism where everyone has a choice, their dollar goes somewhere and then it works. Versus crony capitalism where the government creates laws that dictates where it goes, and then we're at the system we are right now where everyone, like, listen, Miss Sasquatch was complaining about healthcare. Okay. So, like, do we let capitalism control healthcare? Well, no. We should probably have government little restrictions on that. But to allow government have full control on that? So, when has ever full control of anything been economical? On anything. Like, so, like, yes, you when it comes to healthcare and the social net that we have to control it. I agree with you because there's people out there that need assistance. I'm not throwing everybody out with the bathwater, but
I certainly
you
hope
have
not.
to allow. I don't want that. I legitimately don't want that. But the system we have right now, where the government controls everything, that doesn't work either. Like, listen, okay, so California and Canada came up with the I don't know how to describe this in the system without getting banned. The euthanasia system.
Okay.
How do I say
Yep.
that? Host. Okay, yeah.
Made.
Same
Yep.
time.
Made
So
here
yeah,
in Canada. Yep.
same time. Same time. So like 800 people have performed that in California. Same population as Canada. California, same population. And then Canada's done 50,000. So like there's something wrong here. Like legitimately something wrong.
Well, I
And
work in
this
the
isn't a
human care
conservative
field. Yeah, so I
dude.
work in the human care field, and my family has been involved in the human care field. Now, while I'll agree with you at some point there, unless you've been in the human care field, I tread gingerly on this subject,
No, I'm
Scott.
not going to try. No, dude, I'm not going to. Because here's the problem, it's now an insurance thing. So here what it is. If people go through the system of the government to do what they're going to do, rather than go for other healthcare things, the insurance works. So like if before that law was put in, if you put a pew pew to your head and took yourself out, there's no insurance. Now there's insurance. So like
Hmm.
this is a benefit on corporatization of this. Like, dude, listen, the people that are on that edge, I want to help them. But to say that what the system is right now for quickly evaluating that, I think it's bad. I think it's wrong. I legitimately I do. I don't
Okay.
agree with that. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, Scott, I'm gonna put you. I'm gonna have to end you there for a second here, because we're getting a little bit off topic here. But QW, thanks for being patient. Welcome to the show. Can I get your age and can I get a rough location for you?
37, Northern Alberta. I was actually in one previously a little while ago.
Welcome to the
Um,
show. You've been listening in, so what do you have to say?
well, my point of view is with everything that's going on within the medical system, to politics, to the uh, tariffs and then the carbon tax and the whole 9 yards. It's everything has to do with how the government is trying to, in a way, not so much in nice terms, but I'm going to try and be nice. They're trying to screw the general public. And what I mean by screw the general public, by taxing the poor to enriching their pockets. That goes from people who manufacture vaccines to passing laws to enforcing those laws. It's all a part of the politics of our government, and that's including even in the US. Now,
Isn't
at
that the
some point,
government's, hang on, QW, but isn't that the government's job? Isn't that what we
yes,
put them in
I
place
will
for?
agree. Yes. Now, when it comes to, like, for me, I know a few people, and I'm related to some people that are on government assistance from AISH and welfare. Now, here in Alberta, AISH is about around $1,900 right now, give or take. I could be wrong, but
It's lower than that. Yeah, they just actually knocked another $200 off of it. I
okay.
believe they're sitting at about 16 or 1700. Now, again, don't quote me on that. Maybe somebody who's a little more acquainted with the system more recently than I have been. It's been a few years since I was dealing with Aish now. So sorry, QW, go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. So some people and that like here in Alberta, and this is from past knowledge and that, like, there's a lot of people that can only go out and get, like, while they're on AISH, they can only make up to $950 on top of what they're getting. So anything more than that, it gets deducted dollar for dollar, which
Yep.
in all aspects in that is the proper way to do it. But there's a lot of people in that with taking care of kids and buying groceries, paying bills, and especially if they own a home from being on AISH or they inherit a home from a passing relative, getting that money, even though it's like $1,600 or $1,900, either way, it affects everybody. Like, well, it's not so much affects everybody, it affects the person that's on disability. So property tax, it varies in that on if you own property that's out on an acreage and that, like, it can vary from 400 to over $1,000 in property tax. Like, it all varies. And
Yep.
being on disability, there's a lot of people who can't afford that.
Yep. So would you say that in a lot of ways that essentially the way that the age system worked is it's enforced poverty?
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Yeah. Like, I
If
also
you're
know
gonna be
people
if
that,
you're gonna be reliant on us, we are gonna make damn sure that you look like you need help.
well, yeah, exactly. And like my mom, she was on government assistance and everything, and she had to get her teeth pulled. And she ended up going to an orthodontist, and she knew that she was covered and that for her dentures and everything else. But the denture property where I live was charging her $3,500 when she knew she was covered. And I think that's where Sasquatch was getting at, where some of the system is corrupt. And it should be adjusted in some ways, in that in every province, it should be adjusted for people that are under that poverty line.
Yep, I
And
agree.
that's assuming I'm correct, Sasquatch. If I'm wrong, please correct me.
All right, McGilvery, I'm going to go to you, and then I'll continue down the panel. Just Scott, we just left you, so I'm hoping. I'm just looking at the time here. I think I've got enough time to here kind of run through the panel one more time here at the close of the show. But if you're just tuning in from whatever part of the world here, the show is Radicalized. I am your host, Mr. Radical. Here on the Beaver Politics Network, we work for the peoples because we are the people's. Everybody on Beaver Politics gets an opportunity to have their say here. That is the way that we conduct our lives. The only way people feel like they have been heard is if they get a chance to be heard. And that is what Beaver Politics is all about. It is bringing knowledge to the people through discourse. So, McGilvery, thanks for being patient. What do you have to say here near the end of the show?
Well, I'll take the opportunity first to gas up the host and just say thank you so much for hosting such a civilized environment in which to have discourse. Because there's, as someone who does a lot of scrolling through lives, I really do enjoy the guest thing, but there's so many spaces that are just a bunch of people hollering over each other. And you've taken great pains both to cultivate a good audience here and a good panel and to keep us all on the rail. So I do thank you for that. It's important.
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to. I know that we talked about taxing the rich a little bit, and I just this is a great time to bust out the maximum marginal tax rate for the United States over the last 100 years and look at some numbers. So in round about the post-war period, like one of the biggest economic booms in U.S. history, the top marginal tax rates on the rich got up into 92%. And of course, that's a marginal rate, so that's that percentage on the amount of money you made past the previous bracket. You know what I mean? So, but still, obviously, a very high number. And now in the United States, for example, it's down around 37%, and one of the lowest points over the last 100 years of taxation on the rich on the highest tax bracket in the United States was between the years 1925 and 1931, which you might recognize as being the beginning of the Great Depression, when it was at 23 and 25%. So I'm a real big proponent of taxing the rich. I think Sasquatch has a really interesting point about indexing the basic personal exemption to the poverty line or to some other thing that because this is the thing is we keep pinning these on fixed numbers and we need more sophisticated math to be going about a lot of these things. And I'm not normally a person who advocates for a reduction of taxes. We've seen some chat this evening about how the countries that have a higher quality of life than us, and almost every one of those jurisdictions has higher taxation as well. So this is the thing is it's a good society is not going to happen on its own, and we need to be prepared to. But people are right to demand better of how the money is spent as well. I don't think that people are wrong for feeling that way. I think that's a lot of what people are feeling, because I hear a lot of people talk about taxes and the problem is that the number the tax is being multiplied by in most cases has gone up. That's the thing. The tax itself didn't go up. The percentage of your GST didn't go up. The percentage of your income tax didn't go up. What went up is the cost of goods, the cost of living, the cost of the basics. And that's where you're paying so much of that tax. So what we need to be doing is bringing those costs back down. I talk about Singapore a lot on these discussions because Singapore to me is I feel like Singapore is to economics what the Mongol hordes are to history, in that they're the exception to many rules. I don't know if anyone's a Crash Course fan, but that's one of the Vlogbrothers' things. If you know the Vlogbrothers, but that's one of their sayings. But Singapore in their post-war period, when they were basically wiped out, there was tons of I don't know how you say this when you describe this kind of conflict in TikTok speak. So, but it was post World War II, so you can draw your own conclusions. So they were rebuilding from nearly nothing. And what they did was the government got into the business of providing housing, and they built a bunch of housing and they sold it and rented it cheaply, and they made sure that people could have the things they need. And they built one of the most capitalist societies on the planet. This is the thing is you talk about doing these things. You talk about doing things like, okay, well, there's not enough houses for our workers. So we're going to build, we just take the SimCity approach. We're going to build more houses for our workers. We're going to build them cheaply. We're going to take out the profit motive. And then we're going to make housing cheaper that way and also use that to increase supply and drive down the cost. All this is very common sense stuff if you're a believer in common sense, which I'm not. So this is the because common sense is a logical fallacy, and I won't bore you with that. But yeah, so this is the thing is Singapore, this is the hub of finance, of trade, of shipping, of manufacturing for all of Southeast Asia. And it's the most capitalist place, almost the second most capitalist place in the world, the second easiest country in the world to do business. And they understood that they needed to invest in their people. They understood that people they have to get the thing you're promising them. If you're going to promise them, okay, if you work hard, you're going to have what you need to succeed, and if if you do the thing, if you do your 40 hours, and you're gonna have your needs met, and people don't anymore. And in every society, in my view, like in every you go from from communist Russia, the Soviet Union, to Singapore, to everything in between, Turks and Caicos, whatever, America, whatever. Every government is, to some extent, an actor in its economy, and all we ever get from our system of government and our economic system is variations in the extent to which the state is a participant in its economy. But this is the thing; it's all just gradations of the same thing to me in a lot of ways. Like socialism is the extreme, but that the socialism is like, okay, well, you nationalize all the public resources, which I do support, by the way. Like, I think we should nationalize Nova Scotia Power. I think we should nationalize. This is how Norway is set for life. They charged sensible. Let me tap the sign. Let me tap the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund sign for a moment and talk about how they applied proper royalties to their oil when they did get into the oil business, and they are set for life. Billions and billions and billions of dollars in a sovereign wealth fund that will ensure the quality of life for Norwegians for generations to come, because they didn't fire sell. Like, this is the thing, like the oil industry, we talk about it a lot, and it's not untrue that a lot of people depend on it for their livelihood, and I think those folks feel attacked when we talk about doing something other than that. I'll say two things. One of which is that we're cheating at it. We're subsidizing it by not charging those royalties, by not requiring the oil companies clean up their wells, and by letting corporations destroy a beautiful province, just leave like these disgusting oozing scars on the face of the province of Alberta. And we don't require them to clean it up, and they never make amends for it, and they just go laughing all the way to the bank. And we're sort of like we're massively subsidizing that industry, both by doing that and by direct subsidy, by buying them pipelines. And every party is talking about buying more pipelines. This is the thing: is we put an enormous amount of subsidy into that industry. So that's one of the reasons why, in ways, it feels like a Soviet era make work project. Because like we have to subsidize that oil heavily, or it ceases to be cost effective to extract. It's like bitumen is not like it, we have to subsidize it, because if we sold it for what it actually costs to produce it, and we made the companies clean up the wells, and we charged appropriate royalties on the oil, it wouldn't be viable anymore. So this is the thing, is I understand that like a lot of people depend on that. I understand that people work hard in that industry, but this is the thing, is that people are being told that if you shouldn't have to go out to the oil fields and work 80 hours. Like, I hear people are bragging about how exploited they are by their employer. You know what I mean? Like, and I know, and Sasquatch, I don't mean to call you out here. I know you're not bragging. You're doing what you have to. But some people, like, that's their whole personality, and they're proud of that. And they think that that's a great way to be. And it's horrible. We are being asked for more and more and more by the people we work for every day, and productivity continues to ascend, and wages continue to stagnate, and we have no time to spend with our kids anymore. So you're seeing that in the education system now. I want to talk about education and healthcare, because those are issues that are important to me, and that's why I stay involved in provincial politics more so than federal. So in both of those industries, we've been defunding them for so long that the work environment has become miserable. In education, we demanded that we mainstream kids that have special needs, but we didn't want to spend the money to make sure that EPAs are in the classrooms with them to provide them the support they need. In the medical industry, we know that they've demanded that nurses and doctors and orderlies and whoever do more and more and more with less and less and less over time. And like what you see now is like massively toxified workplaces. Those places are miserable places to work. The people in them are very unhappy, and so you're seeing like people, like, I think there's a lot of conflict that's created between parents and teachers, because the parents have less and less time to raise their kids. You can't raise a family on one middle class income anymore, and you used to be able to. One lower middle class income, I would add, depending on what point in time you're talking about. You can't do that anymore. People can't get away from their jobs. Their jobs follow them home. Their jobs are in their home now, and so we have less and less time to raise our kids. Our teachers are being asked again more and more and more they have more training and more students and more students with more complex needs, where resources aren't being put in place to help them. And so you find teachers and students and teachers and parents rather in conflict with each other, and they're like, what the hell is going on? Why isn't my kid succeeding? Is because we are being fleeced. We are being fleeced by our governments who have just continue to hand sacks and sacks of subsidies and tax breaks. And malfeasant, incompetent, bordering on malfeasant tax policy and tax policy implementation. And that's where we need to turn our attention. And we have to stop focusing on the things that appear to cause us to think that other working people are our problem. And I'm sorry to say, I have to allude to some of the things that Honey Badger alluded to, like the things that I'm hearing said about trans people. I wish that folks had some trans people in their lives like I do. I've been immensely fortunate to be around folks who are trans as a consequence of the fact that I've worked in the music industry. And I have got to strenuously object to when people are confronted with the problems, the very, very real economic and social problems in our society, and they start talking about trans people. Look, these people they have no power over you. If someone is telling you that someone who's got no power over you is your problem, that person means to mislead you. That person is not your friend, and they are lying to you. And this is what happened in the early 1940s in Germany, and that's what we're seeing happen down south right now. They are destroying their entire country. Their country is being looted by oligarchs who are standing on the stage as the president is being inaugurated, and they are seated in front of his cabinet, not behind. Yep. It is clear who's in charge. We are being looted, folks, by corporations, and we have to start using the stick as opposed to the carrot in dealing with them.
I agree. Well said, McGilvery. Thank you. Sasquatch, your final thought for tonight?
Well, how am I supposed to top that? I mean, God, you put me right under that banger.
If anyone can, you can, Sasquatch. I believe in you.
Well, and I want to touch on that whole identifying as working hard. And, I've had to break out of that cycle because I was raised by loggers. And I mean, I was 7, 8 years old, doing the compass work with my dad, riding the quad and holding up the little GPS to a little piece of metal on the tree. And we used to take the highlighters and do his little maps for him for the blocks and stuff. And I was raised in a very kind of that toxic kind of idea and looking down on people that don't have education and stuff like that. And I've had to break out of that on my own. And sorry, what's the dog doing? What are you doing? Oh, it's popcorn. Never mind, we're good. It's my popcorn in the microwave. Sorry. But I just wanted to touch on that a lot of people have that identity, these young guys and older guys too, because they've been doing it so long, because they've gotten sucked into that old school system where basically what happens is that is their life. If you're pulling 60, 80, 100, 140 a week, that is your life. And they basically, and for me personally, that's not the life that I want to live on either end. I don't want a housewife at home that I trap at home and she's stuck doing all my work for me. And I sure as fuck am not going to be that housewife. I can tell you that right now. And for me, God bless anyone that does it. I'm just saying it's not for me. Like, you'd be seeing me on the news. It would be a bad time. I'd be driving my car into the river or something. I love kids, love them dearly. Not at my house. Just come and visit, then you go home. But
kids ain't for everybody.
No, and the funny thing is in my family, I always babysat. When I was 8, 9, 10, I was always the babysitter. Kids and animals adore me. Everyone thought I was gonna have the babies, and I'm like, nope, I'm going blue collar. I will come and buy cool presents for the kids, and when I'm off, take the kids to the museum, and we'll go play at the Railroad Museum and look at the skidders and bunchers. But hell no, I want to have my own life. And that's another thing I wanted to point on, is that it's not just about affordability. It's the entire construct of this whole American dream of you work hard and buy a house, you get a wife, you have your kids, picket fence, and people are being broken in this economic situation of that illusion. One, financially, no, it's not feasible anymore. And two, it's not really that great. We're getting way more data that single women, child-free women are way happier and healthier. Married men are way happier. Do we see the point there? Somebody's doing all that legwork, right? And even my friends that are child-free with husband, they have to do a lot of shit that I don't have to do. They're cleaning, muddy footprints out of the house and packing lunches and stuff, and they still go to work. They work 40 plus hours a week. And I think that this whole thing is a lot more than just holding our politicians and our governments accountable. It's holding ourselves as human beings accountable, that as a man, going to work for 10, 12 hours a day is not enough. And, that women are having to pick up and go to work too. And we're starting to see, well, I do the same as you. why the hell do I have to do more? And I have to go to therapy, and I have my own support system, and I have my friends, and I take care of the kids' needs, and I worry about myself, and I'm worrying about this grown man and mommying and being his therapist. That illusion is being broken down. And for me personally, I don't really care if I end up with somebody or not at this point. It's like, I would just like to be able to live autonomously in my own home that isn't flipped on me every 6 months, that I own, that I can go home to, and I can live the way that I like. I can go home and be peaceful. I can go to work and work the way I want. And I just don't want to be hassled by the ineptitude and the entitlement of other people. Be that, I can cry all day that the boomers fucked my generation, or I can cry that men make the system harder, or this or that, or whatever, the corporations. But at the end of the day, I would just like all of those hurdles and all of those additional problems in my life out of my way. Like, I'm sick of having to bulldoze through everything. And that's why I work 20 hours a day, is because that's what it requires financially and like mentally, to just keep going and feel like I have any power to keep going and get where I want to go. And I don't mind doing it. I'll work 20 hours a day, 6 days a week for the rest of my life. I have no problem doing that. But I'm not going to do it for an apartment that I rent and a 2001 Cavalier with the wheel bearing falling off. I refuse to do that, while I'm paying for healthcare of people that, live in a house. They pay $200 a month and $800 a month in property taxes with 5 vehicles in the driveway, and they're going to fucking live longer than me, and I'm going to die paying their health care. And is it the boomers' fault? Partially. It's the system that we have that has been the status quo for so long. You work hard, you have a family, you pay your taxes, and you trust that the government and the company that's selling you this product and, whatever, your neighbor down the street, you trust everyone. And I'm not saying don't trust in your neighbors. I'm saying be more aware of what is actually in your best interest, and don't vote conservative, because that's not in it. Unless you're a billionaire, that ain't in your interest right now, or you're a landlord. I wouldn't invest in that. But other than that, think about what your goals and ethics and ideals are, and how that applies to the people around you as well. We're talking trans people, they need us. Queer people, they need us. Indigenous people, they need us. Women, kids, they need us big time. So accountability on ourselves and accountability on our system is great, but we have to kind of break this status quo, because it's fucking outdated. It's absolute nonsense that we're all supposed to parade around and smile at each other while the world's burning is bullshit. So that's all I want to say, is that not all of us don't have kids because we can't afford them. It's because I don't believe in that bullshit lie. It's been sold to me as bullshit, and I just want to work and own a little house. That's all I want.
Right on. Thanks, Sasquatch.
Worries. You were worried it was. Come on, that was great.
QW, you have the last thought for the night here.
Well, I will 100% agree with Sasquatch in that. Like, my hat goes off to any woman that's a single parent that works 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I will agree there. My hat goes off to them, like being raised by a single parent myself. My hat just goes off to them, because single women and that raise kids on their own, it's hard. So that's just my experience of being raised by a single mom. So it's very hard for them. I will agree with Sasquatch there. And being a parent isn't for everybody. Like, I'm a single dad of 2. So I do get where some people are worried about how the status quo is starting to lean more into one direction, and that I get it and that. But the problem is in that, what can we do to stop that from happening? But that goes along with everything that I've been saying from the get-go, is that I would never push my political beliefs on somebody. Everybody has a right to their opinion on who they vote for and everything else. There's no point in trying to change people's minds, because, well, everybody has that right to pick who they want to represent them. And it's just a great big juggling act for everybody, because who we vote for is the foundation of either our failure or our providence, assuming I use that word correctly. Like, for me, in that, making sure that my kids are taken care of, in that, and they have a future, is my number one concern. Being a dad and being a parent, and that's my biggest worry, is making sure that my kids and that can go out and get a job and that and work hard and that to be able to buy their first home or their first vehicle. Like, to me, that's important. Like, being a roofer and everything for 21 years, roofing is a hard enough job as it is, and there's not much medical care in roofing. So, like, touching on the whole medical profession and that, like, we have lack of doctors and nurses and everything else, and a lot of it in that, like, I strongly believe we need more throughout the entire country. We need them. And I think a lot of it has to do with the stress level and the lack of not being paid enough to be able to go through all those stressful facts and dealing with people that are on life support or anything like that. Like, it takes a big heart to be in that profession. Like, I'm positive, like, correct me if I'm wrong, like, you were, when just Scott was in here, you were saying that you were in the medical profession. Like, going to work every day to see people basically on their deathbed is stressful for somebody that's in the medical profession. And it is. Because then you...
I'm just going to say that I work with medical professionals. I myself am not a medical professional, but I work with nurses on a day-to-day basis. I get the inside scoop on what's happening in the hospitals.
Yeah, and it's very stressful because a lot of these nurses and doctors, like, a lot of people will sit there and say that they don't, but you can see that they have an attachment to the people that they're helping, and you can see it clear as day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, I am going to thank all of my panel here. John Scott, I know that you left there. I appreciate you coming in. I wanted to thank everybody, McGilvery, Sasquatch, John, thank you very much for being here. I want to thank my audience. The show is Radicalized. I am here every Saturday, 6 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern, here on the Beaver Politics Network. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Thank you for having a great discussion. I appreciate everybody. Throw out your final words, and we'll close her down.
Thanks so much for having this. This was a great discussion. It was nice to meet you all, and it's nice to hear. This thing is the Tower of Babel. This thing we're talking on right now, and I think it's not an accident that some powerful people want to tear it down.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep, you betcha. I agree. I'm just going to agree and leave it at that.
I agree.
I say the same thing. I agree as well.
John R. is another parent. All my best to you as a former grunt. Appreciate you spending time on those roofs, my friend. Thank you, everybody. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of our viewers, all of our guests here on the Beaver Politics Network. Thank you very much from your host, Mr. Radical. We will see you next week. Good night, everybody.